I know I say it every year, but I'm over it. I'm over this year. I'm over 2021. And as Taylor Swift and TikTok proclaims, I'm feeling 2022. Speaking of 2022, I have read 20 books in the month of December. So I have read a lot of books. Now let me tell you why. I have read a lot of audiobooks in the month of December because I don't think I've told you guys this. So sorry to segue into this so abruptly, but I got COVID. So I am a server in a restaurant. So honestly, it feels like it was just a matter of time. I can't believe I went like the full 2 years without getting it before. And we like are very, in my opinion, like pretty wary of like COVID at my restaurant. So it's not like we're all just like licking light poles, you know, but don't worry about me. Like I'm totally fine. Luckily, knock on all the wood, that everyone else that gets Omicron, because it is very contagious, everybody else that gets it will have the same experience as me, which is that it was not that bad for me personally. So I hope that for you if you have the unfortunate case of getting COVID. So some of them I might not even give summaries on. Not totally sure yet, but let's jump right in. The first book I read is The Plot by John Humph Corlitz. So this is one that I was really highly anticipating and then ended up just feeling very like, bleh, like ugh. I gave it 3 stars. This is a mystery and it's supposed to be about a professor who teaches writing, and he had one book that came out that was like amazing. Everybody was obsessed with it, but then he hasn't been able to write anything since. And he has a student who's like, I have a fail-safe plot. Like my plot for my book is amazing. It will sell. It will be a bestseller. And he's like, really, what is it? The kid tells him and he's like, hot damn, that's an amazing summary. That's amazing. That's perfect. And then years and years later, when the book hasn't come out, the teacher looks him up and the kid died. And he's like, oh my God. So he steals the plot and writes it. Now that sounds so interesting, but I found this book incredibly boring. I found it incredibly boring. I found him and his girlfriend's relationship like just so boring. And I was just like, okay, like the plot of the plot is good, but the book fell flat for me. But then I picked up and physically reread A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. Now, I listened to the audiobook of this at the very end of November, and 3 days later, I received this in the mail, and I started physically reading it, and where I had given it 4.5 stars on audio, I gave the physical reading experience a glowing 5 out of 5 stars, and it immediately, after reread, bumped up to my favorite book of 2021. I'm serious. Like, skyrocketed into favorite. This is a favorite of all time. I'm absolutely obsessed and I highly recommend physically reading it. The audiobook is fantastic, but the physical reading experience. This is one of the most well-written books I've ever read in my entire life. So this is a like Dracula's Brides reimagining. And one of the reasons I say reimagining like that is because it isn't just his brides. He is bisexual in the book, and it's so gay. This book is so gay too. I'm freaking obsessed. But you were following Constanta, who was one of Dracula's brides, and she thought that she was the only one. She thought that they had this amazing, you know, love story that was so perfect. And then kind of, this is a love story about like manipulation and gaslighting. But this is told through love letters that Constanta has written to him after she has killed him, and trying to explain why she did it. And then it's also following her relationship and the relationships in amongst his brides and like husbands and how they relate to each other. It is so fucking stunning. This book is stunning. Like, I am never gonna stop telling people to read this. I'm begging one of my coworkers who was like, Katie, what should I get my fiance for Christmas? She likes books. I was like, okay, what does she read? And he was like, oh, she's into that like vampire shit. I was like, read A Dowry of Blood. Sean, if you're out there, if you did not buy your girlfriend this for Christmas, I'm throwing hands. And then I listened to the advice of Allie from Hardback Hoarder, and then also Jordan from Jordan Reads, and I picked up the audio for Suffer the Children. And I loved it. I loved this audiobook. This is like, if you like Stephen King's like Pet Sematary and The Stand, I feel like I liked this way more than Pet Sematary, to be honest. Like, I think this audiobook is absolutely fantastic. It is, in my opinion, like pretty, like much like a perfect lighter horror. I say lighter because it is horror, but it's not like the troop, you know, it's not like insane. But this is a story of how every kid, everyone who has not reached puberty in the entire world dies in 3 days. They just all hit the ground. And it's like a virus, but it happens very suddenly. And you're following through the first half of the book, you're following a bunch of different families and them at first, like it is a slow beginning, but it's so worth it because you're following their lives with these children and like maybe the difficulties of being a parent, the lovingness of being a parent, and then them watching their child die in front of their eyes. And that's a really amazing part of the story because that gives the backbone of the story of the children on that third day. All the children suddenly start waking up as vampires. And you have the backbone of the story of seeing how much those parents love these kids and seeing them die and knowing they're never gonna let that happen again. So the things that they go through to keep their kid alive, who now needs to drink human blood, it's so good. The only fault I had, I gave this 4.5 stars. The only fault I had in this book was I felt like it ended very abruptly, kind of in my opinion. Like, it's a pretty big book and I felt like it needed another 100 pages. I would have loved another 100 pages. I wanted more from the story, but I definitely suggest picking it up. I don't really feel like people talk about this that much and it's really good. And then I did another reread, and that is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. Now, this ended up being one of my favorites of the year. I gave it 5 stars again upon reread. This is a book about 8 strangers and a hostage situation that isn't a hostage situation. It's a bunch of miscommunication. It's a bunch of confusion. It's about a bank robbery that never happened. It's about a bank robber that disappears into thin air and how all of these strangers, while they're in this hostage situation, start talking about their lives and then connecting with each other and realizing that they have a lot more in common than they thought, which is the anxiety of being an adult or being a parent, being a wife, being a husband, being a daughter, being a son, and their jobs, and like how difficult it is to be an adult and how easy it is to fail at being a grown-up. And this is so stunning. I think anyone can relate to this. Like, I can't think of a single human being on earth that doesn't feel the anxiety of being an adult. So literally anyone out there, pick up this book. A book that has been on my TBR for so long and I finally got it done is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I am very surprised at how much I ended up liking this. I gave it 4 stars. I had such a good time with this book. And this is one that people like really don't like, I feel like. And then there's just like a few people on BookTube who really love it. And I was very, very happy to find how much I like this book. I really did. So this is about a circus, and this girl like wants to go to the circus so bad. And she's been writing this like circus owner or whatever her whole entire life. And one day she gets these 2 letters in the mail for her and her sister to go to Caraval, and she's so excited. But she's supposed to get married, and she's like, oh my god, I can't go. I gotta get married to this guy to save my family, you know, whatever. Like, my dad wants me to get married to this dude. Her dad's a piece of shit, by the way. Like, her dad sucks. Anyway, it's about her and her sister. They go to Caraval, and every year Caraval has like some sort of game for these magicians, and the game this year is to find this girl's sister. So basically he kidnapped her sister, and the whole game, all these magicians are trying to find her. I really enjoyed this. I'm not really sure why so much of BookTube doesn't like this. Maybe because it probably came out like around the same time as the Night Circus, and the Night Circus is very beloved on the internet. So I'm not really sure, but I really liked it and I would suggest it. And I followed that up immediately with the second book, Legendary by Stephanie Garber. Now, I had a very good time reading this. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first book. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I had a good time, but I don't know. You're following her sister, Donatella, and while I liked Donatella more in this book than I liked her in the first book, because in the first book, she's just like, is an idiot. And in this book, she's a lot better. I was just like, oh, okay, we're here now. Oh, okay. And I'm kind of finding myself not really enjoying series as much right now. So that is probably what's going on. But it's good. I think it was a good second book. I just didn't find myself caring all that much. And then I ended up DNFing finale. And again, like, it's not bad. It wasn't that it was bad. I just didn't really care. So I DNF'd that, and I'm not counting that toward the 20 books. This came out of nowhere, The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. This was sent to me by Lori Miller. She sent me the physical book and she was like, I've never heard anybody talk about this book, but I just read it and I really love it. And it did come out in 2021. And then I didn't read it and I was like, okay, like this just doesn't seem like it's gonna be for me. Then she sent me the audiobook and I was like, Lori really wants me to read this book. She really wants me to read this. And that definitely pushed me into it. This is one that I read when I didn't realize that I had COVID and I was like tired and I was like, whatever, I'll just like listen to an audiobook. We'll see, it's my day off, you know, whatever. So I started listening to this and I can't thank Lori enough because this is 5 stars. This is 5 stars. I have never heard a single person on the internet talk about this. Not a single person. This book is fantastic. I think that if you like The Push, which I adore The Push, it was one of my favorite books of the year, I think you'll like this. Then let me just read the first sentence of the book because you're not gonna believe me. Okay. I killed a little boy today, held my hands around his throat, felt his blood pump hard against my thumbs. He wriggled and kicked, and one of his knees caught me in the belly, a sharp lasso of pain. I roared, I squeezed. Didn't take him for long to stop kicking. Like, it's just the very, very first chapter of this book. This is not a mystery. You know exactly what's happening. This girl, when she's 8 years old, she kills a little boy, and you are following 2 different timelines. You're following her when she's 8 years old and even before that, and figuring out how her family dynamic and the way that she was raised and the nurture over nature part of her life came to be that she killed this little boy. And then also her as an adult under an alias who is trying to live with the realization that she has done this and living in a society where people are like, you should be put to death, you know, you killed somebody like a long time ago. So it is very, very interesting. I think that the mother-daughter relationship between this girl, Chrissy, who's the main character, and her mom is so fucked up. You're reading it and you don't agree with Chrissy, but you were also like, I see how you turned out like that. Like, I'm sorry, Chrissy, that freaking blows. So yeah, I want to push this down everybody's throat because nobody's talking about it, and I gave it 5 stars. And then I picked up the audio for Stephen King's newest release, which is Later. I do really like this book. I gave it 4 stars. I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed it. It's not a long book at all. I read it in one day. It's super good. It's about this boy who he can talk to dead people. Like, he can see people that have passed away within like 48 hours of when they die. So his mother is an editor or a publisher. She's an editor or publisher, I don't know. But she, like, her big cash cow is this writer. It's kind of like George R. R. Martin, where every time he comes out with a book, she makes a bunch of money. But one day he dies before his last book has come out, and she's like, oh my God, I was banking on that money. I need that money. So she takes her son to the place where he has died and is like, I need you to find this guy. I need you to find this dead guy. I need you to talk to him and get him to tell me the plot of the story. And just like plagiarizes the book, you know? And it's so good. Like, I can't even remember what the mystery would even have been. It's not even a mystery. It's just that, like, the mom, who is a lesbian, God bless, has a drug addicted girlfriend, and a lot of like fucked up stuff goes down with that. And that is really good. I don't feel like I'm selling it, but I really liked it. The next book is another 5-star, another reread, and another favorite of the year, and it is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Now, I've spoken about this so many times, and so has the entirety of BookTube, so I'll be very brief. This is about World War II. It's about 2 sisters, one of which who is very fiery, and she becomes a spy for the resistance called the Nightingale, where she goes and captures airmen, and so that they won't be killed in enemy territory. And then her older sister is very like steadfast and stubborn, putting her head in the sand, and she wants to avoid everything about the war, but then a German commandant commandeers her house, and she has to live with the enemy, and her daughter has to live with the enemy as well. And it's how these 2 sisters, who are just complete opposites, are fighting the war in very different ways, and are like, one of them's like a reluctant hero and the other one is like throwing herself into being a hero. It's so good. It's so good. This book will make you cry. It is stunning, beautifully written. I know everybody talks about this on BookTube, and it is for a very good reason. I followed that up with a book that is incredibly similar, and that is The Girl You Left Behind by Jojo Moyes. So this is a book that Grace is like, this is one of my top 3 books of all time. I really want you to read it. And I was like, Jojo Moyes? Like, okay, like, sure, Grace. And she's been asking me to read this for like 1.5 to 2 years, and I just keep not doing it. And now that I've read it, I'm like, Grace, I will never second guess you again. I will never second guess you again. You're completely right. Oh my God, I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't even feel like I should get into it because it is so similar to the Nightingale. It's so similar, but they're both stunning, and they're not competing in any way. It's just 2 beautifully written stories, and the main character is just such a badass, and her husband is a prisoner of war, and her and this German officer like kind of become like reluctantly friendly, but it's not like they're friends. It's like both of them looking at the other one and going, I thought you were supposed to be a piece of shit. Like, aren't you the enemy? But you seem like a good person. But if you're a good person, why are you doing this? I'm confused. And then the other person being like, I have to do this. I don't have a choice. I freaking loved it. I loved it. It's so good. And no one is more surprised than me. I can't believe I'm about to say that I read another 5-star. I read 3 5 stars in a row. What? And it's Coraline by Neil Gaiman. Now, I listened to the audio and I highly suggest that, like highly suggest it, because it's narrated by Neil Gaiman. And when I tell you, this motherfucker is creepy as shit. I can't remember a time I've been more unsettled listening to an audiobook. Like, why is this one of the scariest books I've ever read? It's like a children's book. Like, what? Oh my God, the main character is a literal child, and I was out here looking over my shoulder, like scared. And one of the main reasons is because Neil Gaiman, I don't know how or why, what he was thinking, but there's like these like rats are like talking to her, and they have the creepiest freaking voice, and it's like a bunch of like voices on top of each other being like, you can't escape. It was so unsettling. It was so freaking creepy. I can't. But this is about a girl who basically this like world opens up to her where she has another set of parents, and they have coins over their eyes. And she's like, oh, okay. And they're like, oh, I'm your other mother. And the other mother is like, I just want to love you. But then really it's like the other mother being like, you can never leave. And I'm obsessively in love with you. And I'm going to take your soul. And it is creepy. Like, I feel like this looks like such a cute book. Don't be fooled. And then I read The Night Olivia Fell by Christine McDonald. This is 1 star. This book is so bad. And this is the book that I read when I went to get tested for COVID. And I was listening to this book. My coworker gave me this, like literally right before I left to get tested for COVID. She gave me this book and she said, I think you'll love this. This is gonna make you cry. And I should have known when she said that she bought it at a grocery store that it wasn't gonna be good. I'm not even gonna tell you what this book is about, because even though it says a USA Today bestseller, like what book doesn't say that? But I'm like, this book is bad. It's bad. And then I listened to the audiobook, which is very short, for 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl by Mona Awad. I gave this 3 stars. I really love Mona Awad's writing. It's hard for me to say because it is just a girl in like a fucked up relationship, and her relationship with food and her relationship with her body image. I can't say there wasn't a point to the story because it is like the ways that people look at fat people. So I'm like, there is a point to that. I didn't have a fun time reading it. And then I listened to I can't say I listened to the audiobook. I listened to part of the audiobook for Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. I DNF'd it, but I got far enough in that I knew that that's how it was gonna stay for the entirety of the book. I just did not believe this story. I did not believe it. It's about this girl who is a caretaker at an old folks home, and she goes to get gas, and there's a guy who can't pay for his gas because I think he forgot his wallet, and she pays for his gas. And it turns out to be that the people who own the retirement home that she works at, it's his son, and the guy's like super hot, looks like a freaking model, looks like an actor, whatever, and he's super rich, and he's super cool and funny, and he's such a badass and all that stuff. I didn't understand why he was into her, because the main character is like so quirky and she's so like, oh no, I don't go out. I don't go out. Like I wear cardigans and oh my God, no, like what? I eat hard candy, you know? Why was he interested in her? Like she was so dull. I did not get it. And it was just too quirky. It was too quirky. I didn't like it. DNF'd it. Now we're getting into I was full blown right in the middle of this coronavirus situation, and I read Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. I love this cover. But listen, here's the thing. I can barely tell you what this book was about. I listened to it in 2 days, or probably even less than that. I blew through this book, and while I think it is good, I didn't really care that much, and I did not find myself very interested. I am not finding myself interested in fantasy right now, like in any way. I don't think this book is bad. I really don't. I think that there are a lot of qualities of this book that I liked, but I didn't like reading it because I just didn't care. Like I just did not give a shit. And it's not the book's fault. It's my bad. And every morning the way home gets longer and longer. I cried so hard. I read this book in November. I physically read it. And this time I listened to the audio, and the audio is stunning. It's stunning. Both, you can physically read it and get a 5 out of 5 experience. You can listen to the audio and get a 5 out of 5 experience. Both ways are equally as good. I was snotting. I literally like drained my entire sinuses reading this book. I was crying so hard I couldn't even freaking breathe. This book is so good. It's one of my favorites of the year. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I am literally obsessed with this book. It's 76 pages, and some of the pages literally don't even have anything on it. Like that's just a compass. And look how big the font is and how far it is spread apart. How can something this tiny have such an impact? Like this packs such a freaking punch. This is about a boy and his grandfather is going through dementia, and it's him trying to explain to his grandson what's happening to him and trying to ease him into saying goodbye. And it's about how difficult it is to lose your mind before your body and the struggle of knowing that it's happening. And it is fucking heartbreaking. It is so heartbreaking. I can't. Like, pick this book up. If you don't cry, you have no soul. This next book, God, I don't know how to talk about my feelings about this book because I don't really know what my feelings are, but It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I'm gonna give this 4 stars. I think that this book is fantastic, but I don't want it in my house. Like, okay, I'm gonna try to sum up my feelings about this. This is a book. It's not a romance. I know people say that, but you really don't even understand. Like, it's not a romance. This is about a domestic abuse, emotionally abusive, manipulative relationship, and how easy it is to stay with someone because you love them and love them even though they hurt you. And this is the reason I don't want this in my house, is because when I started reading this book, I didn't really know what it was about. And I started tabbing immediately. Like I took them all out because I'm not going to keep the book, but I tabbed the shit out of this book. I absolutely loved it. This is, in the beginning, a love story between these 2 characters, and I loved it. I loved their relationship with each other. It was so good, so cute. And this book is funny and it's really good, and the characters are really good. But when it turns abusive, I was so shocked. I was so shocked, flabbergasted. I could not believe it. And I understood why the main character stayed. I forgave the other character. I was like, okay, well, shit happens. And I was like apologetic. Like I forgave him. And then, you know, when it keeps happening, you're like, well, there's a reason, or there's this, or there's a chance, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you're doing, like, I was doing exactly what the main character was doing because I fell in love with this guy in this story. I really loved him. And then when this shit's going on, I was like so taken aback. And then while the book is progressing, I was so angry with myself because of how I had felt about him and how I was still kind of feeling about him, and that I felt bad for him. And it made me so angry. And it was like, one, the realization that you always think about situations like this, like that wouldn't happen to me. And I was reading this book, like apparently it would, because I totally sympathize with both of these characters and I totally see why she's still with him. And it made me like so mad at myself, and I don't want to be reminded of that. And I think this book is so, so good. It's so well written. And in the author's notes, Colleen Hoover says that she wrote this about her mother, and that just broke my heart. Like I was like, oh my gosh, so sad. And it's so realistically told. I think it's a fantastic book. If you can handle it, I would say to read it. It's really good, but it like upsets me. So I'm not gonna keep it. And then I picked up the audio for Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. But this is about a girl who, when she was younger, when she was in high school, her best friend is murdered, and how she played a part in it and how her boyfriend played a part in it. And you're following that, and then you're following years and years later when it's found out that she had a part in it, and then she goes to jail, and her, like, see, this is what was confusing to me. There's the mystery side of you trying to figure out how she had a part in it, what happened there, but then there's also a bunch of story about her in jail. And while her being in the women's correctional facility was very realistic and well written, I was like, okay, like, why are we talking? It just didn't seem like it should have been part of this story. Like, there was just so much story about the jail. And I was like, I don't care about that. I want to know how you took part in this girl's murder. Like, anyway, I gave it 3 stars. And then I finally picked up In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. Now, this is like a horror fiction slash like memoir, nonfiction. It's very interesting. I don't necessarily hear this book talked about like a lot, but when I do, it's always with such glowing praise. This is a story about an abusive relationship, and it's about a abusive gay relationship and how homosexuality, you never see abuse in homosexual relationships, and you never get representation on it, and the reasoning behind that, and like why, like literally there was a part in this where I was like, oh my god, yeah, I felt that so hard. It's about like Carmen's real life and about her abusive relationship with one of her girlfriends, and how she doesn't, at one point she says she doesn't want to leave because she doesn't want to prove her family right when they say that like her being gay is a sin, and that she didn't want the one other lesbian that she'd ever introduced to her family to be like evil, and for them to like believe all of these religious like horrible things that they had always told her. And I was like, damn, yeah, that is true. And I think that like basically like the entire gay community feels that way, you know? It's like they're supposed to be happy all the time and whatever. I just thought it was really good. And she tells it like it's a horror story, and each chapter is very short, and it all starts like, the dream house as a film noir, or like the dream house as a Disney princess. And then it'll be like a very short chapter kind of like putting a situation that happened to her in the frame of like an allegory of like a Disney princess or something like that. And it's very well told. It is a very, very good book. And it was very like daunting and eye-opening. Like, it was raw. The shit that she went through, I was like, wow. And lastly, I picked up The Righteous by Renee Audier, and this is the 3rd book, the first being The Beautiful, and then The Damned, and then The Righteous. Now listen, I love these books. I love these books. I love this world. I just love it. I love vampires, okay? Did I forget to say that? It's about vampires. I did end up giving this one a 3.5 star. It's probably more of a, well, no, it's a 3.5 star, because I was like, I really like Pippa, and I think that the book is good, but nothing like really happens as far as the main storyline goes. Like, she's trying to find her best friend Celine, who's like kind of missing. I don't think that's a spoiler. It's like not like anything crazy happens, but whatever. She just wants to find her, make sure she's okay. So that's going on, but like nothing happens. And then the thing that made me so mad at the ending of The Damned, if you know, you know, my girl, nothing gets resolved. In the 3rd book, I was so upset. I was like, I need to know. And they didn't tell me, so I have to wait for another book, which I will. I will be reading it. But it was a filler book. Now, okay, here's the thing. I'm not gonna lie to you. Yes, it is a filler book, but Pippa and, oh my god, I already forgot his name. Shit. But Pippa and the dude, that shit was hot. That shit was hot. It's like the lawyer for these vampires, and he's like a, I don't know, like half fae, half werewolf kind of situation. I don't know. But this dude and her, that shit was hot. That shit was hot. I was into it, okay? But I did give it 3.5 stars because I had a good time, but it wasn't like that great. Okay, that is going to finally wrap it up for 2021. That is all of the books that I read in December. And if I read anything else in the next like 2 days, I'm gonna count it toward January because you can't stop me, okay? But what I really want to hear from you is I really want you to let me know down below what you want to see me read in January, because I don't really have any plans and I really need you to give me some ideas, especially for content. If there's any reading vlogs you want to see me do, I don't care how outlandish it is, I don't care what book it is, let me know. I will buy it, I will go out there, I will go to the bookstore, I will buy it, I will make this content for you because I'm fresh out of ideas. Like I don't know what I want to read, I don't know what I want to film, I don't know what content you want. I am just spent on 2021 and I need you to give me ideas for 2022. And if you would like to do that somewhere other than the comment section, you could follow me on Goodreads or Instagram, which are going to be linked down below, as well as a other myriad of links that can help support this channel. And speaking of supporting this channel, I'm considering starting a Patreon because many of you have asked, but I don't know what you'd want to see. I don't really know like what you want from me in a Patreon. So please let me know that down below. I am very interested, but I just don't know where to start. So let me know, please, please, please. If you've gotten this far into the video, you could leave the champagne flutes cheersing because we are almost at the beginning of the new year. So that will be exciting. And all of that to say, I hope you're having an amazing day, evening, night, dusk, dawn, whatever it is you're having right now. And I will see you in the new year. Bye. And then I picked up the audio for The Righteous by Renee Ahdieh. Wow. So this is the third book in, I don't know what the series is called. It might just be called The Damned, but there's The Damned, or no, wait, shit. And then there came a day where I like Insta ordered. Did you hear that? That was rude. This is a story of 6 strangers who end up having more, is it 6? Oh shit. It's 8. It's 8. Yikes. And then we have an absolute stunner. This is about World War II, and this is about, or is it World War One? Oh shit, I'm an idiot. No, it's about World War II. I'm a double idiot. The next book is about World War One.